we made Wolverine panel. I'm Len Wein. I was the writer. Herb Trimpe, the artist. The brilliant and talented Herb Trimpe, I should say.
You're too kind.
Yeah. But seriously, is there really anybody, God, there must be people out there, in this world who doesn't know the origin of Wolverine?
Sir,
Well,
certainly not. It's certainly not an hour's worth of information. That's for sure.
I've always disagreed with Origin. I don't believe Origin exists.
No.
Because he's a much more interesting character. The less you know about him, than the more you know about him. However, they did make a lot of money on Origin, so I didn't, but they did.
So is this a Q&A or what?
I think we're better served as a Q&A, don't you?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, well,
I don't know, but I got another joke.
All right.
No.
Oh, please, God, let's
No.
make this a Q&A. All right.
Ooh, that's still great.
It is bright. Here it is. Do you have questions about Wolverine? There's one, thank God. Okay.
Was it always an intention to have Victor Creed as a half-brother, or just as an arch nemesis?
I'm sorry.
Or James Allen?
I don't think it was always a plan, because when Wolverine was created, Sabretooth hadn't been. So it's really hard to make that kind of plan at the very beginning when you haven't invented the character yet. As I said just earlier, I don't know if the mic picked it up, but I've always disagreed with the Origin miniseries. I believe it's gospel the way I believe pigs can fly. I think he is a much more interesting character the less you know about his past rather than the more you know about his past. And so as far as I'm concerned, that book never happened. And that will probably color some of my answers. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about the creative process behind creating the actual character himself, the way he looks and the way he's presented in the first couple of books?
It is a very strange story. I was asked to create Wolverine basically because I was writing a book called Brother Voodoo for Marvel, which was set basically in the Caribbean and Jamaica and Haiti. And I love writing accents. And so many of the characters in these books all spoke with Caribbean accents. And Roy Thomas, who was the editor at the time, can't do accents to save his life. He's the first person to admit it. And he said, I love what you're doing with Brother Voodoo. How would you do a Canadian accent? And he said, I got a name that's been sitting around for years called Wolverine. Give me a Wolverine. Give me a Canadian superhero, just so I can hear how you do the voice. And I said, fine. And I started doing research and discovered that Wolverines are short, hairy, vicious creatures with razor-sharp claws who will not hesitate to take on creatures 10 times their size. And I went, well, that's the easiest character I've ever developed. And did the story. I made him a Canadian mutant specifically because there had been talk at the time at Marvel of reviving the X-Men as an international team of mutants. And I figured, all right, here's a Canadian. Whoever wants him, whoever ends up writing that book, if they want to use the character, they've got a Canadian mutant to play with. I didn't realize I was going to be the person who ended up writing that book, but it made my life easier. But that's where the character comes from. The visual came from basically, I guess, me and John Romita Sr. sat down together, as we did often when designing new characters, and sort of threw ideas back and forth, and the costume came out of that. Let's do that. Well, okay, let's add this. And how about that part? Nah, that's too busy. Let's take that. That's really the creative process. Creative process is always a process of give and take. And then we designed it and handed it off to Herb. We'll have a good time, I hope.
I am the beneficiary of a composite effort. Since I presented the visual view of Wolverine, how he appeared in the published versions. So I'm not complaining.
Yes.
Who came up with the concept of adamantium?
Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas had been using adamantium in some previous title, I forget which one, but the whole concept of the indestructible metal was his. The concept of it being inside Logan evolved out of the series as we went along. You know, I think probably Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum were more responsible for that. Yes, sir.
Can you just speak a little bit to just the popularity of the character, the longevity? How did that come as a surprise to you guys, or was it while you were creating the character something you thought this is a pretty awesome character? I bet he has legs.
Everybody always asks that about any character created by anybody. Did you think it was going to be a huge hit? The answer is always no. We always hoped it would be a huge hit, but nobody's psychic. No one ever knows in advance. I mean, I can't imagine a writer and or artists in this industry who created a character and put it out going, well, this is going to fail terribly. We all kind of hope it's going to work. When it does, we're thrilled. When it doesn't, it's the artist's fault or the writer's fault, depending on which one you are.
I had no thoughts, actually.
Yeah, it was amazing. You could hear the ocean if you put your head up to his ear.
No thoughts whatsoever. You know, somebody told me what to do and I did it. It's that simple.
Professional, I like it. Back there, sir.
Who's your favorite character to write in terms of personality, and who's your favorite character to draw for visuals or action?
Why don't you take this one first?
Say that again, please.
What is your favorite character? What is your favorite character to draw? Either the visual or the action that they give you? I mean, what really attracts you to them?
Okay. There was a priest
And a rabbi.
and a rabbi and an imam sitting in a bar. No. When you're working deadlines, it's a rapid fire process. Usually, even before the book is penciled, it's on to the writer. You know, those pages to be written at that time, and then the inker, and it's kind of assembly line process. And there wasn't a whole lot of thought to exactly, and this is my experience, as to exactly, you know, there was not a lot of retrospective thought about, am I having fun, you know, that kind of thing. For me, the job had an awful lot to do with deadlines, had an awful lot to do with making sure there was enough time on the other end for the book to be, to go into the next stage of production, and of course the paycheck. I mean, that was the main thing. I mean, I worked on a quota basis. I got paid for the amount of work I did, so there was an inclination to go as rapidly as possible and still produce something that was pretty much comprehensive to the reader. Although on the other side of that coin, I have hacked out quite a number of jobs just to make a deadline with not a lot of forethought going into the work. There was a point where I was doing 3 books at one time. It was Godzilla, Defenders, and Shogun Warriors, and that went on for over a year. And I might have been turning out pages as fast as Jack Kirby was doing at the time. Maybe not as good, undoubtedly not as good. And there's the most time I've had to actually think about any of this stuff was when we started going to shows, encouraged by my wife Patricia, sitting here. Do you mind standing up and singing? No, no. And the shows were kind of an eye opener to me because it made me go over some old ground and maybe discover some new thoughts about how I actually felt about the stuff at the time. I know I was once recorded as saying to my embarrassment today, when I was in my mid-late 20s, first coming into Marvel, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 40 years old. I'm getting a real job, you know. But, you know, you get locked into, it's almost like typecasting. You get locked into a job and then a place, and then you get used to the money, and because it's not so bad after all. And you kind of let it float along until something happens, like Marvel goes bankrupt in the mid-90s.
Again?
You know? Does that help?
For me, I mean, in terms of characters I most enjoy writing, the Hulk was one of them. I loved writing the Hulk. And Batman are probably my two favorites. Next question.
The Hulk was the most fun, I think. I think the Hulk was the most fun.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Well,
If you had to qualify it, I would say so.
And it was a great voice to write.
Yeah.
I just loved, I mean, my version of the Hulk, as opposed to many other people's, was the strongest creature on the face of the earth with the emotional level of a 5-year-old. You know, just leave Hulk alone or Hulk will level your city. Yes, back over there.
So when Marvel decided to turn the X-Men into a TV series and show it, how did that affect your workload? Like, did that create complications for you guys, or did it like inspire you guys? How did that affect your life?
Except for the fact that I was working on that first X-Men series as one of the writers. Not at all. Everything is unique unto itself. I have written comic books, novels, animation, live action, television, live action feature film, video games. If you can write it, I've done it. And I approach every single project unique unto itself. You write for the medium you're working in. That was the first rule I taught myself, where occasionally I would adapt my own stories from the comic to a TV show and make major changes from the original story. And the editors would go, "You changed all that." And I went, "Well, yeah, this is a better TV show than it is a comic book." And that's kind of how you have to work at it. The fact that they've changed them to accept the opportunity to write them in other mediums, changing these characters into other mediums has had no effect whatsoever on anything.
I really had no idea. You know, I operated inside my own bubble, so any other thing that went on outside that, I might have heard of, but wasn't particularly interested in it. I mean, by that time I was working at home anyway, and you know, you're just keeping your own work pace and focusing on your own area of involvement. And I really never knew what was going on. I mean, I worked inside the office for about a year, but after that, I had no idea what was going on in terms of projects and who was doing what to who or anything like that. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
What was it like to work against a strong deadline?
Panicky. Hysterical.
Since these days you hear a lot of comic people say, well, you know, I'll get that story done and we'll get the next issue out in 6 months or so, versus the old days where you had it on the first of the month, whether the artist and the writer were ready or not.
Yeah, there was a reason for that. I mean, the only person I remember getting fired in the early days, literally fired, not just, okay, you're assigned to freelance when you can get it, but was for missing deadlines. And one of the reasons for that is I don't know, I can't believe it's any different now. They must pay exorbitant fees, but the printers were unionized, and they had their own, they weren't just printing your stuff, they were printing a lot of stuff. And if you weren't making their schedule, you got charged, you know, like overtime fees for having your material at the plant too late. It's all different now, But and that was serious business because it cost the company big money,
Yes.
and that it wasn't tolerated. I mean, you could draw bad, but if you were late, that was one of the things I had going. I didn't miss deadlines because if I had to do 10 pages between now and tomorrow, I could do it, and I did it once with an Iron Man issue.
Wow.
I don't know. I think there's an Iron Man issue. It's kind of like a flimsy-looking cover with, pen line or something like that. It was all drawn very quickly. And the interior, I think we did that book. I penciled that book in 2 days.
Wow.
And it really shows it. But you know what? It didn't cost them anything extra, and people who were used to buying Iron Man, most didn't notice. I don't remember any particular reader response that said, "Oh, what happened to the art in this issue?" So I tried to focus on those particular areas. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was editing for DC, I had artists who would skirt the edge of disaster, and occasionally I would say, "Look, you got 2 options. I get the art in on Friday, or we're printing 8 blank pages with signs on them that simply say, so and so screwed up." And they almost always came through on it. Only once in my entire time when I was doing the Who's Who back in the 80s, with all pin-up pages, I gave a particular artist an assignment on a Monday, and I said, "Look, the book ships on Friday. I must have this no later than Thursday morning at the latest. I've got to get it colored, inked, pasted up, all of the above." Thursday came. Thursday went. He didn't show up.
Oh, my God.
I went home, and I drew the page. I had Dick Giordano, God rest him, who was as good an inker as ever has been in this industry, ink it, because I'm not an idiot. I mean, fix this. Could you put the arms where they belong? Stuff like that. And Dick inked it, and we had to go through production, and one of the house colorists colored the page, and the book shipped on time. And the following Tuesday, the artist came in with his version of the page that should have been there a week earlier. And I looked at it and I said, "This is absolutely beautiful. It must be 50 times better than the page I drew. Here, paper your wall with it." He said, what do you mean? I said, "I told you the book shipped last Friday. Book went out. I have no use for this page whatsoever." And he looked at me stunned. And I said, "I told you. This is professional comic books." He went, "Oh, okay." Never missed another deadline.
The best excuse I had heard, because I was in the office for quite a while in the beginning, working in the production department, as well as picking up freelance on the side. This was just prior to starting on the Hulk. The best excuse I ever heard from one of the artists about a late job, and I think this artist should probably go unnamed. Coming in from Queens, New York, the artwork blew out the window coming across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, wow. I like that one.
Frank.
Of course. God love him. Yeah, I had a problem similar to that with an artist I was working with on, I think still Who's Who. He was doing one of the covers. And it was the same case. He was an ex-military guy. So I said to him, I said, "This page has to be in on time." And he said, "Absolutely." And he lived in Philly. And it must be in on this date. You must mail it on this date. I have to have it the next day. And he said, "Sure." And then the next day came, and no page came. And I called him up. I said, "I thought you were a man of honor. You're in the military. You promised me you'd mail me the cover. Where the hell is it?" And he said, "I mailed you the cover. I swear to God I did." I said, "Then what happened?" He said, "Well, when I got to the post office, I only had $1.18, so I mailed it parcel post." So I said, "So it's out there in the ether somewhere?" And he said, I guess.
And a week later.
No, well, hang on. And I said, "Tell me you made a Xerox of the page before you sent it." He said, "Yeah, of course I did." I said, "Good. The 318 from Philly gets to New York at about 5:07. Get your ass on it with the Xerox." He did. He got him in. We had it inked over the Xeroxes. And the following Wednesday, he was a man of his word. He had mailed it. The cover showed up.
Before scanning,
Yeah, it's a different universe.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, God, yeah.
It's amazing there's still an industry.
Nobody's asking questions over here.
Yes, ask questions over there. There's
Somebody
a-
over here.
Yeah. Did you have any kind of creative input with Chris Claremont when he started to develop Wolverine, or any kind of interaction with him at all at any point?
Now,
Well,
who's-
aside from dinner occasionally.
Who's Chris Claremont?
No, I mean, I would occasionally kibitz from the sidelines going,
Okay.
really cool, really cool. What in the hell was that? Really cool.
What the hell is it?
I mean, Chris had one habit that used to drive me out of my mind. He never finished a story.
Yeah.
He'd start something, it would run for 3 or 4 months, he'd get distracted by something else shiny, and start another story. And 6 months later, I would go, you remember the one with the silver bears, whatever the hell they were? Finish it! And so that was my only interaction with Chris. Yes? Well, I do occasionally write Wolverine stories, though. I did a number of them for the animated series. So I've actually probably written more Wolverine stories in the animated series than I have in the comic book. But no, I do get my chance every so often to still play in that ballpark. Oh, there's a hand.
What's your opinion on Hugh Jackman's portrayal of Wolverine?
Well, since he can beat me up, well, in all seriousness,
Good.
yes, that's the word. In the very first film, when you first see him in the cage, bare-chested with his
Oh,
back
that's
to you,
awesome.
I looked at it before you ever turned around and went, oh my God, it's him. And he's perfect. And he's also
Perfect.
one of the nicest men I've ever met. And this is the one that really pisses me off. He's better looking in person. He is utterly gorgeous. One of my favorite things in the world is a photo that was taken at the first con we were at together, in San Diego. And it's Hugh, myself, and my wife. And this is the three of us together, and I've got our arms around each other, and Hugh is looking at me and smiling. I'm looking at the camera and smiling. And my wife is looking at him like he's lunch. I mean, he's just absolutely one of the nicest men I have ever met, and gorgeous on top of it.
That's funny.
I mean, the first thing he said to me when we first met was, I'm sorry I'm so tall, because he's 6'3". And I said, it's okay, I tell people you play I'm short. And he does. You don't really realize how tall he is.
He really does. Yeah.
Is there a hand way in the back there, or am I? No, there is one of them now. The one that paid me the most money. That's not true. It's like asking who's your favorite kid. I actually have a favorite kid, but I don't tell the others that. No, I mean, I've written a number of stories over the years that I'm very proud of. I think the ones I respond most to are the ones where I write the story and I get mail back from readers going, that made me cry. There's no amount of money they can pay you that matches touching somebody on an emotional level with something you've written. But I honestly couldn't pick one out of the thousands I have written over the years. Yes?
By any chance, do any of you have a particular enemy that was Wolverine? Like, do you like a particular enemy of Wolverine?
Oh, I thought you meant me. Guys,
Yeah.
I got guys from high school I don't get along with still. How about you?
An enemy of Wolverine.
Omega Red or someone?
I got to go with his first conflictual engagement with the Hulk.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the one I get asked to recreate mostly too. I mean, I can do. There was a time when most of the requests for drawings were for the Hulk, which I did for 8 years. And but especially after Wolverine hit the movies, the request for the drawings, and they didn't want. I think I only have done two drawings of the Hugh Jackman Wolverine. Everybody else wants yellow spandex. So, and it seems to have made a quantum leap again in the ratio from one to the other here in Albuquerque. all day yesterday up until about 3 o'clock, I was drawing Wolverine. I mean, it was just one right after the other. And I just did 2 headshots this morning for somebody yesterday, you know, and just like on and on and on and on it goes. And nobody wants the, it's weird because the latter day version made the character, the original character, really has no bearing whatsoever on Wolverine as he has developed via the X-Men. Yet, all the requests are for the original Wolverine, which I think that's pretty.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Could you draw the Bi Beast?
Yeah, I did. Yep. Yeah.
All right, who remembers the Bi Beast?
The Bi Beast.
All right, there you go.
I did.
2 heads.
In fact, somebody asked for a recreation for that cover.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
It's strange.
Oh, talking about the villains. I always thought Omega Red looked like leftover parts of other costumes. Never liked Omega Red. Next.
True.
Yes, sir.
What got you into comics, either as a fan or professional, but really the moment where you're like, yeah?
What got me into comics, I started reading them when I was 7. I was a sickly kid, and I was in the hospital, and my father, God rest him, brought me a big stack of comic books to keep me occupied. This was back in the days where if you wanted to buy $17 worth of comic books, it was 170 books, so it was a lot of stuff. But what actually got me into the business in its own bizarre way was my 8th grade art teacher, Mr. Smedley. And honestly, his name,
You
a
never
very dear man.
forget your 8th grade art teacher.
You never do. I drew a picture of a shark in class, and he looked at that and said, "You know, that has actual artistic talent. You could be an artist." And my immediate response was, "I could be a comic book artist." And I became an art major. I majored in art in the rest of high school and college to get into the business. And then when I showed them my samples, they thought as an artist I made a terrific writer. So that's how I ended up a writer.
No, I never actually got into comics, actually. It was something that presented itself when I came back from Vietnam in 1966. John Verporten, the guy I went to art school with in the city, School of Visual Arts in New York, he was like the production chief at Marvel at the time. And
Big John.
yeah. Yep.
God bless him.
Big John, they called him.
He was like
and for good
6'4" or
reason.
5". He was a big man.
And he would intimidate artists who were late on their deadlines. But I was always interested as a kid, mostly in. I didn't buy comics. I had a couple of cousins that really had massive collections. I mean, one concentrated in, DC stuff, and we had Fawcett. I don't remember Marvel at all. Maybe it was timely at that point. It was so long ago. I don't know. But I was interested mostly I was interested in syndicated work, comic strips. I was nuts about comic strips. Because in those days, comics were like the lowest point you could be in media entertainment, where comic strips were one of the highest and most valued forms of continuity art. So that's what I was basically interested in. But so when I went to visual arts, they had one course, and the comic book class was in the basement at visual arts.
Where they could lock the doors.
And there was no windows. It was next to the airbrush department. But the compressors for the airbrushes were in our room.
Oh, great.
So you were always getting these loud noises and hissing and all this kind of stuff. And that's where I actually did, I was able to put together, on a practice basis. And it didn't only consist of comics. It was like political cartoons, comics, comic strips. It dealt with the entire range of single gag cartoons. We did for samples. But that was the point that I did my first samples for comics. And I really, what got me was the storytelling aspect. Because fiction is really telling lies and how well you can tell them. And I was a pretty good liar, so I could tell, I love to do the story, the working out of the story, panel by panel. And And it just went on from there. So when I did get out of the Air Force, and John was working up there, he said, "Why don't you bring some samples up?" And I was looking for work at the time. I didn't know exactly where. I mean, my last job had been in Grand Union or AMP or something like that as a bagger. But I went up there and worked pretty much in the production department. And, you know, they got a regular salary and you had benefits right off the bat. In those days, you know, it was a no-brainer. And they had very good family plans and individual plans, and they were great with the money on staff. Freelancers would occasionally complain about not getting their check when they wanted it, but, you know, the check came in every 2 weeks. And I said, this seems like a good job. And I was picking up in the production department freelance on the side, and then it just kind of exploded from there. And Stan would always, I mean, more than once he would come up and he'd take his hand and he'd rub the top of my head and he'd say, "Trimpe, when are you going to learn to draw?"
Ouch.
No, for me it was a compliment because I was really there for my storytelling abilities, which Stan was. Now, you know, Stan, I mean, I've heard him say it. You know, he was a writer himself, but he saw comics as basically a visual medium. And if you're not telling the story in the pictures, then you might as well forget about the rest of it. The writer's going to have a hell of a job, you know, coming up with something, because in those days, we weren't working from scripts. Stan's technique was, and I think personally, this is why Stan is Stan today. The one thing that differed from comics in the very beginning is that he did not work from full scripts. We worked from plots, sometimes verbal discussions in his office, and you'd run out of the room, sit down at the desk, and write down what you remember, and the artist built 20 pages out of that. And then it was going to the writer to complement the pictures with discussion. I mean, you know, if the thing didn't work, the writer's got to let you know about it. And I thought the freedom in doing that, it was just right up my alley, because that's the part I liked. I liked the cinematic aspect of the comic. I just recently had to work for who's those guys that do G.I. Joe now?
Hasbro.
No, the comic. IDW. I do their covers now. And I just did 14 pages of the Interior Annual not too long ago. Full script, complete detail, more copy than actually would be printed in the comic book itself. And I had a hell of a job trying to work that around. Because for me, working, and this is not a negative view towards the writer, but I found that if I'm working from a script, the tighter it gets, the more I have to see it through the writer's eyes, and then it compromises my own instinctive view of what I feel should be drawn. And so it actually takes longer for me. I mean, if I have to lay out a story and I tell it myself, I can do it much faster, and actually, frankly, it's a lot more fun. I never did like working from scripts, and actually, while I worked for Marvel, I never had to work from a full script. I worked from some pretty complicated plot lines, which I had to break down, which I didn't prefer, but it was still preferable over scripts. Yeah.
You're one of the best storytellers I ever worked with.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I think our run, you and I, you as the writer, was the most creative and fun stories that we were doing. I liked Roy's stuff too, but I think consistently we came up with some
nice
fun
emotional
stuff.
stories.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, one of my all-time favorites is None Are So Blind.
Yeah.
Where the Hulk tells the story about the blind girl who falls in love with him.
That's right. That's a great story. The thing is, all the humanity, you know, we all know Banner has the Hulk within him, but we forget that the Hulk has a human side to him. And I don't think, I'm so sick of seeing these drawings I mean, I don't know why I involve myself even. I get mad at myself for having an opinion. But I look at these Hulks, and they're always mad, you know, like they're all, and the Hulk wasn't that kind of character.
No, I mean, our Hulk, at least, you know, because I know Steve Gerber changed it radically after. No, I'm sorry, Peter David changed it radically after. But my Hulk was the strongest creature on the face of the earth with the emotions of a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And,
He loved kids.
Uh-huh.
They didn't
hang
threaten
out
him.
with the deer, with the deer in the forest.
With the
All he
animal.
ever wanted was to be left
alone. That was the thing.
You know,
he was
then-
harmless if you did not corner him.
Exactly. Then along came Peter David, who gave him Bruce Banner's intelligence. And I looked at him and said, great, so now you have Superman without the cool powers. You know, what made him interesting was all that power with very little restraint.
I know. It's ridiculous. I thought it was. But, you know, people are compelled, editors especially, to put their stamp on things. And, you know, even though you have new readers coming up generation after generation, there's a real, you know, in the back of your mind, the editor has this idea of what can we do next that's going to be interesting so this thing keeps going. I mean, there is something to the argument is if you keep everything the same, sooner or later it's going to get so old that the book is going to fail, you know, or just not do so good that will force you into some sort of change. But like killing every character off and bringing them back to life again, that's the extreme... the extreme insanity, you know, they should be able to come up with something more interesting.
Stan used to talk about the illusion of change.
The illusion of change.
Yes, you do things in the
very
book,
good.
they'll look like you're changing things, but at the heart of it, you get back to the core.
Yeah.
Because the core is what makes it work. Anytime anybody ever tried to kill off Aunt May, it's like, no.
You kidding? I mean,
she is what balances him out.
And also
she
why?
is his guilt, you know.
To sell one issue?
Yeah,
you know, I mean, what the hell?
And so they would periodically kill off Aunt May and someone else would come on.
Yeah, I know, it was
What are you,
terrible.
nuts? Bring Aunt May back.
I mean, half the appeal, or most of the appeal of a family, or a group, is that they all always survive. Like, you know, the Star Trek family.
Yeah.
Nobody dies. I mean, well, Spock died, but he didn't.
Yeah, but he didn't die.
No, and they did it so emotionally. I can't watch that bagpipe scene to this day. I don't cry in real life. I cry over movies. And I cannot literally watch that scene with the bagpipes playing Amazing Grace. And it's an alien. The juxtaposition is so touching that, and then the way the music breaks out as the thing is shot out of the ship, it makes me well up every single time. It never fails.
There's some hands back over there somewhere, a bunch of them.
In the dark.
Yes. The one who just got the mic, I guess. We'll
I don't know if you guys have read the Marvel's current series, Wolverine and the X-Men, but it puts Wolverine in the position where Professor X was. He's now the headmaster of a school for young mutants. I was just wondering if you ever thought the character would go in that direction and what your thoughts are on that.
Nunca.
Absolutely. I would never have imagined that. You know?
Well, so what happened to Professor X?
He's still around, but he doesn't really run the school anymore.
Boom.
Cyclops has his own team of like militant mutants, and Wolverine wants to have like a school for youngsters to have like be peaceful.
Oh, nonsense. Nonsense. I mean, you got this perfect family, you know. I mean, jeez.
Showbiz.
I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore. I can tell you that right now.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, what is your favorite book that you two collaborated on, or is there a specific run you mentioned?
We were just talking about
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
Actually. You guys didn't hear it, but we were just whispering it.
Much of our, I mean, I love. I'm sorry?
Is there a different book that you guys worked on, or?
We've done a couple of other things along the way, I think.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the Hulk was
We did our favorite.
Yeah, I mean,
Hulk
None Are So
issues.
Blind, The Man Who Came Down in a Rainbow was one of my favorites.
I did a recreation of that cover
Did
too.
you?
Somebody wanted that.
Wow,
yeah.
cool.
Yep.
There were a few that just
Yeah.
touched me. That really kind of
They were just very, very.
For Marvel's least human character, you could write the most human story.
This was the point of the Hulk. It was because what you've got it's the contrast. It's like I couldn't stand the idea. I mean, I love John Romita, of course, and he's one of the most beautifully executed.
Just the sexiest
art,
women, some of the
sexiest women. I mean, him and Buscemi. But the whole point with Spider-Man is he's a hero who's a nerd in real life.
And a loser.
And a loser. He's like the Scarlet Pimpernel, But now you've got Peter Parker, and he's this young, strong, handsome guy.
Married to the most beautiful woman in the world. Duh. Yeah, I
mean, where's the contrast?
And your problem is...
That's exactly it. That opens up a whole world, a universe of story possibilities. Just that alone, I could never understand that whole. They've done it with other characters. The same thing,
Sure.
They take the weird guy, and God knows what Bruce Banner looks like today. Probably, Tom Cruise maybe or somebody. I don't know what he looks like. Who?
I thought Ruffalo was a wonderful Banner, except that he looked too physically fit to be Banner. Banner is not fit.
No.
He's a skinny little nerd.
He's a skinny guy. Not well.
Although Ruffalo played him wonderfully. I thought he was a terrific.
Yeah. I haven't seen that,
Sorry.
actually.
Oh, you got it. Honestly, it's the best superhero movie probably ever made.
Which?
Avengers.
The Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We tried to see it a couple of times, right? But then
You're back again with the number 5. Can't we be sponsored by the number 4?
What do those numbers mean?
It means we have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
So all we have to do is stretch one question, and we're good. Thanks.
No, I intend to see the Avengers.
You should.
Yeah, we were intending to see
and
that.
And of course, don't leave when the credits start.
Oh, after those first few lessons, with certain
Trust me,
movies I can't remember.
There was a tag early on, and you think, oh, that was the tag. Nuh-uh. That's one at the
Okay,
very
wait
end.
till the credits are over.
Over, yes.
There's a theater near here. Does anybody know if Avengers is playing there? Yeah. It's still there. Yeah, let's go to the movies, sweetie.
Yeah, let's all go to the movies. Yeah, I got to leave, unfortunately.
The hell with it. You're leaving today?
I got to be out of here about 4.
Oh, okay.
Sir, in the back.
Yeah, there was, you were talking about the small stories, and it always amazed me that Kurt produced Godzilla and the Hulk and Wolverine, but my very favorite story is Heaven is a Very Small Place.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely heart-wrenching.
We had an organization called the Academy of Comic Book Arts, which was pretty much generated by Neil Adams and some other. I was actually the publicity person for that for a while, sending out stuff to newspapers and all that. And they used to have awards every year, and that story was actually nominated for one of the I don't know what category it was under, short story, a little vignette thing or whatever. It didn't win, no. But it was definitely nominated for, that was a pretty interesting story. Yeah, I liked it. And it was part of that thing that you were talking about where, the contrast between this amazing critter and environment that is constructed just for him to, I think, appeal to his human side. It was kind of a cure. It would have been the Hulk's cure, possibly, where nobody paid any attention to him except to say, "Hey, how you doing today?" That was an interesting concept.
I don't remember who wrote that story.
I think, was it Roy?
Possibly.
Yeah, it was really
That
It was Roy. Yeah. Well, I think he also stayed in the same kind of vein
as I did.
Yeah, we carried it into.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
We continued with that, and that's what made that book so actually enjoyable to do, because of the juxtaposition and the contrast between location and action and, you know, motivation and the personalities involved and stuff. It's pretty cool. And I am the Hulk. I've been told that by my wife.
Well, I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you spoke about your dislike for the origin story and your dislike of Wolverine's current status. I was wondering if you have any opinions on the stories that have ended the character, like Wolverine the End or Old Man Logan. And if you haven't read those, have you guys ever had any thought about what the possible end of Wolverine would be?
I have both books. I haven't read either, weirdly enough. I haven't had time.
So that's been done, though.
Yeah.
Under what guise? A future.
They did a series of books called The End, where they told.
Oh, I see. Okay. Why don't they wait till the end to tell the end?
I was going to say, my feeling, frankly, is I would never think of the last story, because then what do I do for a living?
Know. Yeah. That's ridiculous. It's another ridiculous.
So, sorry, no opinions.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're history. I'm going to be George Washington, thanks. And, thank you all for coming.
Thanks for coming, folks.
Good. My pleasure. You were terrific.